This is okay, we're live. Hi and welcome to another Emacs Hangout. This is March 18, 2015, and I'm Sasha Chua, and everyone is everyone. So, actually, do you want to do a quick round of introductions? I don't know if people have the images in the same order, but we can start with Cameron and go to the right. Just a quick, hi, hello, name, maybe location. I'm in Toronto. Cameron.
Hey, I'm Cameron Desatel. I'm in Dallas, Texas. Mostly write Ruby and Clojure these days, and anything I can do with Emacs, I will.
Dan?
Oh, yes, I don't have the things in sequence. So I'm in San Jose, California. I'm new to Emacs. Last month was my first hangout. And I'm switching for org mode. And I want to do everything in org mode except for source code editing.
All right. Howard.
I'm Howard Abrams. I'm in Portland, Oregon. Yeah, I actually put all my source code in org mode as well, so I put it all there.
To our great benefit. I'm looking forward to seeing your demos of your updated essays. Jonathan?
Yeah, to Cameron especially. I'm also in Dallas, and I'm a Perl developer. I've been using Emacs for about 7 years.
Neat. Leo?
Myself, also from Toronto. I started using Emacs about a month and a half ago. And I've been gradually migrating everything into my calendar, my to-do list with the agenda, and I spend time trying to make things look like Emacs. For example, with Firefox, I installed this plugin called FireMax. So you can use like keyboard navigation with Firefox, and in Eclipse I installed like Emacs Plus package, so I can use Eclipse with like Emacs keybindings, which is pretty neat. And I was also my .emacs file is also growing quite considerably, so I'm actually migrating it into org.emacs as well. So I'm still in the process of figuring out the details. So yeah, for me it's all things Emacs.
And Philip.
All right, hi. I'm Phil from Switzerland. I write a bit of Java for a living, and I study computer science beside that. And I very recently got into Emacs again. And I'm also in here for the org mode, as is everybody else, it seems. No, I just don't get how to get into org mode properly. So I'm very interested in what you guys have to share about org mode and how to have all the different use cases, how to use it, how to work with it.
All right. So a couple of things to help us guess make the most of this. If you're in the video, with the video conference, you can use the text chat on the left side. You hover over the left side. There's a speech bubble that looks like a blue chat box, and you can use that to chat even while other people are talking. Great for sharing links and other things like that. I'll make a copy and I'll make a copy of this afterwards as well. So any links that you share there can be shared after the hangout as well. And if you're watching this, which at least 8 people are, holy cow, you can also participate. You won't see the text chat, but you can post comments on the event page, or you can use the Q&A feature, which I think might have popped up as you were watching the video, and I will read either your comments or the Q&A as they show up at some point in the conversation. Okay, since Howard actually very wonderfully has volunteered some interesting things, do you want to kick it off with maybe a 10-15 minute presentation of whatever cool things you've been working on?
You're still muted.
Howard, you're still
Yes,
there.
I was basically once I started the screen sharing, it came came over the mute button. So yeah, let me just start with a little micro thing that I had found a few months ago on the Endless Parentheses website. Archer had come up with an idea about doing Unicode rounded quotes, and this was his code, and I thought it was kind of an interesting idea. The main thing here is this section right here, where you know, once you hit the quote, it inserts both quotes, puts the cursor in the middle of it, right? And I was kind of thinking, and then the other thing here is, where is it? Right there. So if you hit the quote again, but you're already on the quote, it'll just jump ahead. It seemed like a pretty good idea. I liked it a little bit, but one thing I liked, I don't know, I guess a little better, was in my approach is that I basically look backwards. So once you hit the quote, I look backwards to see which one I happen to be at, and then insert correctly. What this means is that I can hit a quote, and it inserts this one first, and then when I hit it again, it automatically knows which one to insert. I thought it was kind of an interesting idea just to, I don't know, level up on my eLisp. And if you want, all this code is in the show notes. I don't know if anybody had any comments or questions about that or not. All right, then I will move on to a song and dance routine on my org mode thing. I came up with a little spreadsheet example that kind of mimics or matches a little bit of the essay that I wrote. So in case you don't know much about org mode and its tables, if you just happen to type something like what I've got here, as soon as you hit tab, it automatically fills everything in. And if you, I don't know, insert like, you know, or something like that, it'll automatically make everything work well and reformat the table. Hold on a second. Oops. There we go. All right, so I don't know, 1st January 2015. There we go, tab. It keeps everything in order. And this is, you know, and as soon as you hit a Control-O, you can insert a line for something else. And if you hit tab at this point, it inserts a line afterwards. It's kind of cool. So here's a typical table that I put together. And one thing that I find that's kind of fun is that if you go to any table, you can hit Control-C and plus, and it will sum all of that column. And then you can then paste it into here. Now I did notice that there is a little issue with its rounding abilities sometimes. But that said, you know, like those. And so I found that it's a little easier to format it automatically. Let me show you what I mean. So here's a table, and in this case, what I've typed is a little formula. The formulas, you type them into a table cell. You do a colon and an equal, and then whatever the formula that you want. In this case, I'm using a vertical sum, and then you put the little references in the parentheses. Now the references can be relative. So in this case, what I've got here is I'm saying row 2. So this is row 1, and then this would be row 2. And this -1 says go up from here. So that will be this one right there. So as soon as you type this in and you hit tab or Control-C twice, it will basically sum the whole thing up, put it in here, and then it'll insert this little magic bit at the bottom of the table. What this means is if you change anything like, let's change this to here and change this to a different value. And hey, we can even insert a new value here, 542. If you jump down to here and hit Control-C twice, it'll just automatically sum it and keep everything going well. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but you can put a whole bunch of different formulas down at the bottom of your table. Now, yeah, because I do this all the time, what I often end up doing is putting a little Yaz snippet in here. So here I can give it a name, because I often do that, and then you can just start putting in the categories. And I've already got the
Sorry to
formula.
interrupt. Howard, could you increase your font size a little bit?
You bet. Give it a second, though.
Yeah.
I'm running on a very old computer, and it's having trouble keeping up with the
Wow. All right. Okay.
Good enough right there?
That looks beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, great, great, great. Actually, maybe I should stop at this point and say, does anyone have any questions?
I always find myself looking up the columns, the formula syntax, so it's always great to see examples and blog posts that have tables with the formulas in them. So thanks for sharing.
It is a little cryptic, and I guess this is why I put things into a Yaz snippet. And I can't believe I spelled that wrong. So with a Yaz, you can put it all in and have it right. And if you use relative line numbers like -1 and this thing here with the greater than symbol, that says the last column. So that's why that's written this way. This little bit right here, that's the formatting. It says just kind of make it so that I have 2 decimal places, to make it round right.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. Leo, by the way, points out that there's an org aggregate module package that can summarize tables very neatly in org mode.
Yeah, I asked about this on the on the Emacs email list. The basic idea is every day I log in how much time I sleep and how many productive hours I had during the day, and I want to like in hindsight correlation. But a lot of the time I get like a list of days, and I want to have like a total for the week, for each week, and I was trying to find a good way to summarize that data, and that plugin basically allows you to summarize everything. Like if you have one week, one column for a week, and you say week 1, week 1, week 1, week 1, and then like week 2, week 2, week 2, week 2. And it can then generate a second table from your original table where it pulls everything together.
Maybe Howard, do you have any? Well, once you get to the section there on summing, maybe you have a different approach, and then we can talk about org aggregate and other approaches.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a good idea. What I was wanting to do is I had a series of different little tables. Like you can see here, I had a section for my office supplies, and I just made up a whole bunch of things. So these are just a bunch of little tables. In fact, I could probably put another one in here too. Let's call this Internet. January was 89. Okay, so now I've got my tables. So what I found I could do is, since each of the tables were named, I could then put this little remote thing in this one table. So the remote here says, go to supplies, go to the last column, or the last row, and the third column. In fact, I need to change that to 2 and this to 2 because I was only using 2 columns here. And basically steal them all. So this goes through and sums each one of those things, and then I can then sum all of this. That way I can kind of keep things up to date. Like I could go here and put February. Okay, so that's summed, and then and you know, just kind of keeps all the tables together. The next thing that I needed for my accountant was to keep all of those hidden. And so the one thing I noticed is that I could go to any particular one, and if you give it a no export tag, oh, this poor computer. Let's see here. Here we go. No export. Okay, so if I have a no export tag, that whole section won't get exported. So essentially it keeps it hidden. And that way I could keep my total expenses here shown to the accountant, but she didn't have to see all the details, just the summary. And so that seemed to be a pretty nifty, swell idea. The other thing is I wanted to have certain things just basically paragraphs that weren't exported. So the trick here is that is to use a drawer. So if I had, you know, a little section here, yeah, I could do a Control-C-D, and I'll do. There we go, private. So now when I export this thing, I won't see anything in those drawers as well. So it allowed me to kind of keep the same org mode file and just export it and render it right to a PDF that way. So that was my approach.
You're getting some sidebar comments about your gorgeous mode line and how you're jumping around a bit. So John had a question: if you're jumping around by clicking on things, or how are you quickly navigating to parts of your document? And yeah.
Yeah, Howard, I can be specific about what I saw you do. You were pointing some things out. You were on an at symbol, and you jumped to another at symbol, and then you jumped to a semicolon. And you said here, here, and here, and I couldn't figure out how you were doing that unless you were just doing it with a mouse.
I did grab the mouse once,
Okay.
but I don't think most of the time I was, just because I usually don't try to. Let's see, you can jump from section to section with Control-CP.
Right.
So that gets me from section to section, and then yeah, often I just keep the relative line numbers on like this. Makes it easier for me to kind of like jump down to a particular line.
Yeah, one of the reasons I come to these things is because I like to sit with my colleagues and have them go, "Holy crap, how'd you do that?" So,
yeah, I've been using some of the things like the IY character jumping. I find that pretty slick.
Or Ace Jump is pretty cool, but I didn't see that you were using Ace Jump.
Yeah, Ace Jump is one of those things. Say again?
I'll be quiet.
Okay, so now I talked over you. Yes, I am using Powerline. I do, and I've highly customized it on, you know, one weekend when I wanted to have a little nerd time. So now, yeah, I would like to see that that other org mode table. Who's thinking they could show that off? Leo? Leo, was it? Yeah.
I'm still in progress of setting things up. I don't have anything that's nicely.
Can I?
Okay. Well, so to jump in then, one of the viewers, Eric Johansson, submitted a comment on Emacs and Linux speech recognition, Windows virtual machine, etc., etc. You can join the video call to demonstrate things later if you like. but I think you will need to be in the call before you can demonstrate things. So if you want, you should be able to find the join URL on the event page. Okay? All right.
Can I interject a question here?
Yes, go ahead.
While we wait for Leo to set things up, I guess, how do I get started with this, with all these beautiful different fonts for the org mode stuff? Because I've seen this in a few videos now, and I'm a bit overwhelmed, I suppose, on how to get even started with all this stuff, and I couldn't really find anything. So if there's a link or something.
Yeah, good point. So like this line here, this is actually 3 asterisks, but I'm using the org bullets mode in order to hide the first 2 and give something special for the first one or the last one. So I kind of like that look. It doesn't change anything, yet it looks better. The other one that I've got here, let's see, it's, now I put it in the client. So I've got this little section, and this is probably too small. Let me try to increase this.
Thanks.
And so what I kind of like to have the headers larger and in sans serif. And so
it looks fantastic.
I stole some of this from the eMagician starter kit. He had a little posting about it, and I liked a lot of what I saw, but not everything. Of course, that's the idea with Emacs weenies here. So I stole what I liked, and yeah, it was the stuff like I don't know, keeping everything in the sans font, making them a little larger. Problem is there's just kind of a lot of configuration here. Let me just so you can kind of see here for each of the different org levels, those are the header sections. I'm turning them into a sans serif font, changing the height, and putting a little padding in of 5 pixels.
Your config is available online, is it?
Oh yeah.
Where's the padding? I can't see the padding. Oh, there. Okay, yeah. Cool.
All right. I think
it's hard to see the whole thing. So, but yeah, this is the padding variable that I set. It's basically a line width.
Okay.
Background. Yeah, you can do quite a bit of stuff depending on how much you want, but I think most desktop themes pretty much pick some decent clown-like colors. So.
All right. Thanks very much.
I think it's amazing that you start off with this rather interesting demonstration in org mode and tables, and everyone's like, "Ooh, look at this thing that you didn't discuss."
Yeah, that's fine. That's all. Yeah, that's all good, right?
Right, but speaking of tables, I've just started using org remote more myself too, and I was using it to do some of the things that Leo had been asking about. I haven't used org aggregate yet, but I can quickly show the kinds of sums that I've been doing it as a kind of a fake pivot table from like Excel or OpenOffice. So let me set up screen sharing here too. Sorry, were there other things that you wanted to demonstrate first, or shall we dig into the tables a bit more?
Oh yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so let me open up my Epic Quest of Awesome file. Hang on a second. Let me open Quest. Okay, so hang on a sec. Let me zoom in. Can people see my screen? Just checking. Can people see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So here's let me show you the
have to increase your font.
It should get there soon. Is it zoomed in enough for you, or I'm starting to scroll over here. So let me hang on a sec. Let me. Okay, is it readable?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have a table here with a list of. Okay, let me take a little step back and explain the context. A friend of mine modeled his Epic Quest of Awesome on somebody else's Epic Quest of Awesome, where basically you model your life as an RPG, where different achievements have different experience points, etc., etc. So I made this list with the dates and whatever experience points that I assigned to it. It's a fairly long list, and I wanted to be able to start summarizing this by different, for example, years, and so forth. So here's a table that is automatically summarized from that other table, and the way that it does it is it uses table functions, which taking advantage of things like org lookup all and org lookup last, the usage of which is still rather confusing to me at the moment. So basically what I did was I Googled around for examples, and once I trial and errored something into working, I just left it like that. But what this does is it says org lookup all in the first column over here, in that other table that I showed you with the accomplishments, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit so you can see that. So you can see where that looks like. Hang on a second. Accomplishments. Here we are. So this is a table that it draws from, and what it does is it looks up all of the first column in that table, matching it against the first column of that table, and retrieving the third column. That's what the $3 stands for. So the $3 here, it takes all of this with a matching date, and it uses vsum to get the sum of that sequence. So this is kind of a long way to do what org aggregate will probably do in one very clear line. But since I hadn't actually played around with org aggregate yet, this is how I ended up doing it. Anyway, basically, org tables do really, really cool things. Anyway, so tables, yeah. And now that org aggregate is on my radar, I should totally check that out.
You guys are way more serious about org mode than I am.
Well, it's you start off by using it for your to-dos, and then it takes over the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm so bad about that. Let me speak to that. I think what would be really helpful to me is different org mode workflows. Because we're all Emacs people. We're all used to sort of getting into the guts and hacking around and figuring stuff out. What the challenge for me with org mode is, why do I want to use it in different? I need ideas. You know what I mean? And I think that would be. I know this is sort of a wrap-up type of thing, but that would be helpful to me.
Hmm.
Okay.
One of the things. Oh. Go ahead, Dan. Or.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I'll tell you from maybe something more like a beginner's perspective, and somebody else can take it from there. But one thing you can definitely use org mode pretty successfully for is something like any scenario where you use Markdown, right? So just as a general purpose markup language, but it's a bit more powerful, especially around things like source code highlighting and stuff like that, or even executable code samples or something that you want to run and get its output and put it back into the document. I believe you can do that kind of thing. Something else is literate programming, which is obviously a similar problem to having code samples in your code, but maybe more code than writing. I guess that's not even necessarily true, but the output is runnable. Let's say the final product is runnable. What I think brings most people to org mode and I'm making this up, but I think this is true, is really like the to-do list type functionality. I mean, it's really very impressive about capturing tasks and summarizing them and processing them so you can view different perspectives on your, your to-do items and things like that. And then from there, a lot of people get sucked into like, how do I attach content to my to-do items, right? Like I have this note that relates to this thing or this file that relates to it, and impressively it can do all of that too. So I guess those are kinds of the kinds of things I've used it for.
Well, I've dug into org tables, because I had some work where I was dealing with databases and I was having to do a lot of stuff manually, so I used org tables to move things around, and it was really, really convenient for that. Way better than any spreadsheet or anything else. Other than that, that's all I've really used org for.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of always intrigued with the literate programming stuff that that Knuth came up with, and I don't know, when I saw that Babel stuff, I just really fell in love with it, and pretty soon, because I was always taking technical notes, right, where at a conference or find something interesting, I would always be shoving it off into some text files so that I could refer to it later. And being able to actually put those little snippets in a code block that I could execute and run it and that sort of thing, I just found that really quite powerful and very useful.
I'm starting to get really addicted to the ability to have org links that are not just links to files or other parts of the org file, but also to arbitrary Emacs Lisp code. So I could just, for example, run something that opens up a Twitter window that has the text ready to go, or kill new. So put something into the kill ring with this like string that I came up with based on the properties in this org entry.
Oh,
So
that's a great idea.
being able to use it as a kind of as a repository of quick shortcuts that can be customized for the context is really handy. And I suspect that once I start getting the hang of snippets and starting to do really crazy things with that too, that will be even more fun.
So as a complete beginner, essentially, I just started putting all the stuff I need to keep for my studies in org mode files, and pretty soon I started putting in notes for projects in there and all that stuff. That's normal, I guess. But at some point when I discovered tables, I actually started cataloging my infrastructure, so virtual servers and physical servers, laptops, IP addresses, and all that stuff into a small, well, for now small org mode table, and it has been very useful because I really don't like Excel or any of its clones.
Speaking of databases and building on a point that Jason P. raised in the text chat, I actually do use org mode as basically an organic database of things that I want to track, whether I create a table for it temporarily or I just have lots of nodes, lots of subtrees with properties that I can then parse out using org entry get with inheritance or things like that, or even regular expressions. Because it's text, it's very easy for me to search or cut and paste or edit very quickly. And then as I got the hang of using Emacs Lisp to extract the information from it, I found that it was easy to make tables or even make graphs of information. Does that answer your question about why org is ridiculously powerful?
Yeah, I mean, I've known that org is ridiculously powerful. It's just I just thought that it would be beneficial to just have people that are good with org just say, here's what I do with it. Some of the stuff that you do in chat that I listen to most intently is, Sasha, when you do your chats, is when you're talking to people about their org mode workflows.
Oh, that's certainly something we can do in today's session. If anyone, Leo, I think, has something to show, but if anyone wants to share how they're currently doing things, we can all pick up cool tips from that. And who knows, someone might even have a suggestion for making it even more effective. So, does anyone want to do a walkthrough of how they use stuff?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, if you like, I can show you like some general things I do with it.
Sure.
Okay, let's try to share my screen. Okay, you guys see me?
Yep, I can see your screen. You might want to zoom in a little bit for folks at home.
Okay. Let's see. Is this any better or?
Yep, that works.
Okay. So I'm a software engineer at Red Hat, so all of my work is Java-based. But I use org mode for organizing my things. So I have several files. One is called leo.org. This is where I keep things that are my personal stuff. Like, for example, all the things that I have to do with Emacs. And one file is called dev.org. This is where I keep all of the things that are related to development. For example, in this case, I am working on a bug, and I kind of create little subtasks. So I create little subtasks for the things that I have to do as part of this task. Further, like each subtask, I sometimes have little checkboxes. So one checkbox, for example, is 1 unit work or something like that. And you can easily create many of those very quickly. And I'm not sure, can you guys see my mouse?
Yes, we can see your cursor.
Yeah, I also have like a plugin, a module enabled called Org Mouse. And with that, you can actually just click on these things, check them off. Or you can press Control C, Control C. That also checks them off. And you can see that checking the child also checks the parent, which is nice if you have like a hierarchical order. I also use org mode to schedule certain things. So for example, I often put tasks on hold, but I want to avoid the task for being hold indefinitely. So I would schedule something. And the way I schedule something is I press Control C and then Control S. Just like the S stands for scheduling. Then down here, I have a little calendar. I press Shift and arrow buttons to select a certain date. So for example, let's pick 1 week ahead of the current date. I just press Enter. And it will show me my the task being scheduled. So then if I press Control C and then A, I get an agenda view. Basically the things I have to do on any given day. And then if I go to, for example, next week, it will show me here that I have to do this task. So the nice thing about org mode is you combine task management and scheduling in one place. You don't have to have two different applications. I sometimes link certain things together as well. So for example, I have a file called Linux where I keep all of my Linux related nodes. And Suppose I have a task here, or just a note, how to make things better. So with linking, you can link between files very nicely. So maybe in my task, I want to make a reference to a note in another file. So here, like, to make things better, go here. One nice way of linking things is you can configure org mode to create ID-based links. It automatically generates a unique ID like this. I can share the config out later. And then you can paste it in another place, like you can paste it like this. Paste it in the wrong place, but and then you can hop around, quickly get back to the link in another place. I find this very convenient.
So Leo, are you doing a are you storing off that ID and it keeps a global table of those things, and then you're just creating a link to it?
Yeah. So the way it works, I press Control C and I press Control C and L to generate the link. So if I press it right now, you may see that the ID has been created.
Do you know about org store link?
This is exactly what it does, like org store link.
Yeah. Okay.
But he's got a special ID associated with it.
Yeah. In conjunction with Helm. So it creates a link for me automatically, so I don't have to think about it, and it's unique to all of my agenda files. And then in the other place where I want to link this to, I'll press Control C and Control L. And it shows me like a bunch of things I can link to, and in this case, I press that. And at the bottom, you can see I give a link, a name to the link. And then I have a nice way of linking things together. This is particularly useful if you have tasks and you just need to yeah, that's like the essence of it. And from there on, like there's many customizations and little tweaks. So for example, when I'm done with a task, I use org refile. So that means I can move things around to different places. You might notice I have a folder called dev, and inside the folder at the bottom I have dev, meaning finished task. So sometimes when I'm done with this, I want to move this entire section to another place to get it out of the way. In the past, traditionally, I would cut the thing, cut and then paste it down at the bottom, which was somewhat time-consuming. So instead, I set up org refile. Just Control C, Control W, and it shows me places where I can put it instead. So I stack fdev, and it will have automatically moved down here, which is kind of neat. And then another maybe interesting part of my workflow is the notion of Pomodoro and timekeeping, time management, and weekly reporting. So every week I have to submit a report on the things that I've done. And this is usually a tedious thing because I have to figure out what are the things that I've actually done each week. I tried many different things. At the end of the day, I would just make a little note as to the things I've done, but I found maintaining that is very cumbersome, and I never had a good understanding of how much time I spent on any given task. So I started using this plugin called for Pomodoro with a couple of tweaks of my own. So whenever I start working on something, I press the button right now. It starts with Pomodoro, and it starts keeping track of my time, the time that I've spent working on it. I also have estimates saying how much time I want to spend on a task and how much time I've already spent on it. So in this example, I wanted to spend 1 hour on the task, but I've already spent 5 hours.
Is that ticking actually coming?
Yeah, that's actually from my box. I work with ticks.
I was going to say that would be quite hard to work with.
It's a bit loud. I think it's in this setup a bit loud, but on my end it actually comes out to be much more quiet. And something you haven't seen are notifications. I get a notification whenever a Pomodoro finishes. You might wonder what's the point of doing this. The useful part of this is that you get time information on every task. And then you can, when you have your agenda, you can actually see what you've done on any given day. So for example, if I go back to yesterday, it shows me that I spend so much time on any given task. For example, I spent 4 hours working on label, and I spent like 16 minutes trying to figure out tabs for Emacs. This can actually work for the entire week as well. So for example, I have a file where I keep all of my reports. And this creates a dynamic report of the entire thing I've done in the week. So I like then copy, paste, and send it to somewhere else. So that's in a nutshell my workflow. I'm not sure if that helps anyone. Do you guys have any questions?
A small tip, my favorite extra use for org refile that I didn't know about until years after was that you could use Control U and org refile to jump to a place, not just to refile to it.
Oh,
So that's really handy for going to a specific task that you know about that already exists, or just looking at your notes for something. So Control U, Control C, Control W.
I have like a lot of other things for that. I have like Helm mode, Helm, jump around places.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You guys use Helm, right? I often organize things by. I often look for the headings as opposed to the content. If I have like Helm header search, helps me to narrow things down to certain headings. And then as I start typing, it automatically narrows things down. I also have Helm Sleep enabled, and I have like certain keywords, like key, table, but to quickly find shortcuts to do things. So I can't remember how to insert new. If I forget how to insert new rows into a table, I simply press Control Shift F5, type in key underscore table, and then insert our row, and that will automatically find something in my buffer. So that's the thing. So I like to tag things like that manually.
Jason, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, is there any questions? Or? No? Okay.
You know, actually, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Jason and I are good friends, and his microphone isn't working on his laptop. But what he was just asking about in the chat was how many tags are too many, and I've actually wondered about this. I don't know if anyone has anything to say about that, but.
Oh, well, in general, I've found people that use tags, they have like prefixes, like for example, for context-related stuff, they have an @ sign, like @ home, @ work, traveling. And for everything else, they just do random tags like that.
Yeah.
The benefit is that you can, with agenda, you can actually search through tags, and you can find things that are tagged hierarchically. Just to explain that, if I'm looking for something org related, I can search and find all. So to show you an example, this specific item, as you can see, doesn't have the org tag, but something higher up. This, for example, this higher table, this higher heading, has this org tag on it. and all the things underneath, they don't have this tag. It's inherited the tag, but through org tag search, I can still find these based on the tag. And the nice thing about that is I can combine tags, so I can find things that have certain tags together, or I can exclude certain things. So I'd say personally, I'd say there isn't a limit on how many tags you can use, but this is a very objective thing. I think it would just make sense to categorize tags with like with the prefixes. But again, it's a very personal preference. Because like tags, I use certain tags are special. Like for example, drill. The drill tag, I have a module called org drill that basically allows me to access, like it's memory. If you ever used Anki, it's kind of like that, but for org mode. So there's lots of special tags like that. So to give a short answer, you can probably use as many tags as you like, or as few. It really depends on your workflow. Does that answer your question? Sort of?
It certainly answers mine too. So thanks, Leo.
Oh, okay. Great. Is there any other questions that you guys have?
I was wondering about your use of schedules to remind you of things, but I mean, I've used the technique every so often, but I stop whenever I find myself scheduling too many things and then using the bulk actions to just procrastinate them some more. What I tend to do instead with things that I plan to do someday, but I don't have a specific date to follow up on them on, or I don't have a commitment for a specific date, is I just have an agenda view that's already hard-coded with a tag to review that. So I have an agenda view for someday items, waiting items, and so forth. It's just another technique, so that way my agenda is mostly the stuff that I really need to work on.
Oh, I see.
Different techniques.
Yeah,
So-
I don't have. Yeah, I guess I don't have that many tasks. I tend to work on one task for a week.
I have a quick question, actually. These green kind of stars and red, yeah, all that stuff. What is that?
This is called org habit. Org habit. That's a special module that shows me how consistent I've been at doing something. These, if you look at these guys, these tasks are a little bit special. So what makes them special? First of all, these things are reoccurring. You can see the +1 day / 3 day. And it also has a style called habit. So there are certain things that I do like every so often. So for example, every day I plan out my day and I review what I've done in the day before. I check RSS, I read Sasha's blog post, for example. But the key thing, the difference between a regular task and a habit is that certain things you can do on a certain day, but it's okay to do it later. For example, reading RSS. I want to ideally do it every 2 days, right? But if I'm busy, then it's okay if I do it every 5 days instead. That's what habits allows you to do. Now these green things, the stars indicate the days in which you've done a task. The green with no stars indicates a day where you could have done a task but you haven't done it. So these are usually weekends. Like I could have done it on the weekend, but I don't do it on the weekend. And the red things indicate days where you should have done it but you haven't done it. So I should have read my RSS in between those days, but it's like for an entire week I didn't read any RSS because I had a very busy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Have you switched to using IRC within Emacs yet?
I am working on that. At the moment I use XChat, but on my to-do list, I actually have like an RSS migrate RSS to Emacs. It's on my Emacs someday list. Mind you, I've started using org mode like a month and a half ago, so I haven't had time to set up all these fancy bits and pieces. I'm still like at the core.
That's cool. That's pretty cool for 1.5 months. So you mentioned. There's some discussion in the text chat about ERC, which is one of the IRC clients for Emacs. There are quite a few, so you can try the different ones out. ERC is the one I use, but my setup for it is super simple. It basically just logs in, uses my identifies to the password, and then gets going. But
Which
there
one
are
do you use again, sorry?
ERC, Emacs Relay Chat.
ERC. Oh.
And Cameron also has a note about he's actually Cameron. Why don't you? Would you like to speak up?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to. I was just saying, like, I used to have a similar setup to yours. Missing the name. Who was just speaking? Leo.
Yeah.
And over the years, I guess I've drifted away from that because now I find that I like to have my to-do list and my calendar notifications and all these things on all of my devices, not just on my machine running Emacs. And I know that there are some attempts to make Emacs available on different platforms. I can't think of what it's called. There's some mobile seeking thing for org mode, but I never got working very well. Anyway, I was curious if anyone else has kind of a solution whereby they can, still do these things and run their life from within Emacs, but still get sort of modern style notifications, syncing across platforms, like.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I couldn't quite hear. Your microphone was a bit muffled.
Sorry. So basically, something about cross-platform mobile access to tasks, calendar, things like that.
Oh, I see.
I was pleasantly surprised by org calendar's ability to pull in my Google Calendar information and put that into org mode format. So at least it is, I would use that for my calendar, and I think you can even create events using it, and then have that in my agenda file. As for my to-do list, I actually there's mobile org, but I haven't actually felt a strong need to do it because I guess my to-do list is just really short for when I'm away from my computer.
I didn't realize you left your computer.
Sometimes, on occasion, grudgingly.
That could be good.
Yeah, so far I use Wunderlist. Wunderlist on my mobile phone, and I have a task in org mode, a habit actually, to check my Wunderlist once in a while. So I have a list called work items in my Wunderlist, and once every 3 days I just make sure I'll go through that list to make sure I go through them. But in general, I kind of leave my work stuff at home and work stuff at work and my home stuff at home, which has the result that I spend all my time on work. Okay.
So, do you have a to-do on your Wunderlist to check your Emacs?
I don't use Wunderlist that much. Like, I use Wunderlist when I'm on the go, and someone mentions something to me, and I want to follow up with it. So I add it to my list. The reason I use Wunderlist is because I couldn't find any other application that's cross-platform and works well. Because like all of those other applications, they either work only on Mac or only in Linux or only in Windows, whereas Wunderlist works in Chrome and it works well on Android. So that's why I went for.
And did you guys say that Wunderlist? Sorry, did you say that there's an interface to Wunderlist with Emacs?
No, I couldn't find an interface yet. I haven't really looked into it. I just have a task in my Emacs. Sorry, but we have that cleaning lady. She's doing vacuuming in the background. I just have a task to follow up on my Wunderlist item. And once in a while, I open up a browser and I have a look at Wunderlist. But usually I don't have many tasks on Wunderlist. Most of my stuff happens in Emacs.
Jonathan and Cameron are discussing having a Dropbox version, a Dropbox backup or some other synchronized version. I do this for example, my cooking file is in org mode on Dropbox, and since I've exported it using HTML, it's very easy for me to browse through it to kind of quickly look up a recipe or whatever. So yeah, even just a simple HTML export is fine.
Personally, you guys.
Lee, I'm going to mute you because there's some kind of fire alarm, something?
No, it's the cleaning lady.
Oh,
You
clean
know-
it. Okay. We'll unmute you then, and we'll just suffer through it. Can I? Oh, I can't unmute from here. Sorry, you're gonna have to unmute yourself. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I tried the org Trello for interfacing a web to-do list with org mode, and it was close, but not quite right. It didn't quite sync up correctly.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was thinking about that just today. My Trello usage has gone way up, so I've been wondering. I'd seen that integration. It looks pretty slick.
It's close. It's just a little buggy. So if you find it works, let me know, and I'll go try it again. I'll let you guys pick it for me.
Sounds good. I'll give it a go.
You know, Cameron, there's one more thing. I think it was mentioned on Google Plus, but Orgsly, which is there was some discussion about a few weeks ago. I don't use it a lot, but it seems it presents a nice list. I wouldn't say it's a pleasure to enter information there, but it works so far.
And it's called
It's
Org?
Yeah, Orgsly. There was some presentation on the listserv, and then there was a little bit of discussion about it being potentially a non
with the C, O-R-G-Z-L-Y?
Orgzly. That's right.
Yes. Aldrich in the comments says, I've been using Orgsly for a little while in the beta, and I love it. So there's plus to that. And Libridico mentions it as well.
And it's an Android app.
It is an Android app, that's right. I don't think there's an iOS or versions for any other platforms.
Gotcha.
The discussion of it was interesting too, so about his intention for it. So.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
And Jonathan points out there's mobile org in the App Store for iOS.
Yeah, I haven't had good experiences with that. I don't know if
Yeah, I haven't either. I've tried and tried and tried.
I really wanted it to work well. And it doesn't seem like it's been updated in a long time. Like the screenshots of it still look like iOS, I don't know, 6 or something.
All right, so it's an ongoing challenge is what it is. Does anyone have any other curiosities or questions or ideas or thoughts?
I just wanted to say goodbye quickly because I need to leave.
Yes? All right.
All right.
Get some sleep.
Bye, guys, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at what else people are... Oh, quick aside. This thing that I'm capturing in, did you know that org can easily capture relative times? So I started this org timer thing at the beginning of the video, and if I press meta enter, it just inserts appropriate timestamps. I have every hope that I can then turn this into YouTube timestamps for links.
Nice. That would be super quick.
Yeah, probably really good for transcripts, maybe, or actually better for meeting notes.
You know, and that I think is what's so funny. The other, a couple of weeks ago, I was taking notes for my, at the end of my sprints retrospective. And during a Scrum retrospective, you're supposed to take comments from everybody about what was good, what was bad, what needed to be improved. And as I was typing it, and of course I'm sharing my Emacs org mode screen, I thought, you know, wouldn't it be nice if all the bad ones were labeled in red and all the good in green? You know, 2 minutes later, I had the little elist function, you know, coloring it correctly, and you know, after that, everything starts showing up in these day-glow colors, and people are wondering, what? How did you do that?
That is a really cool part of using Emacs, being able to make cool stuff like that on the fly. I hope you converted quite a few people to Emacs in that meeting.
No. I try to keep everybody out of Emacs.
Competitive advantage.
It's elite people only. By the way, Sasha, a few months, maybe last year, in one of your chats that you were doing, you were mentioning how your husband was a VI user and you were an Emacs user. And I was looking at Space Emacs or Space Max and was really wanting to hear how well it could convert VI people. Because it sounds like the ultimate idea between having, you know, that Emacs under the hood, but being able to use the interface that people know.
I think with him it's more of a philosophical difference. So that's totally cool. I'm not trying to convert him. He's not trying to convert me. We actually watch Vimcasts together sometimes. I find it greatly amusing, and it's sorts of some interesting ideas. There are a lot of great VI overlays, lots of VI activity in the Emacs community. So yeah, Space Emacs, all the buzz around Evil Mode and all of that.
Yeah, the space mode seemed like a Space Max looked pretty good in that you just clone the .emacs.d directory, and then all you do is start up Emacs, and away it goes. It sounded like a pretty decent approach for a lot of people to get started and try, but I'm still waiting for some feedback from some of my friends. I'm insisting that they try it and let me know how it is.
I have no experience with it, but it sounds cool.
Definitely.
Has anyone else tried it?
Yeah, I was trying to say 20 years of finger memory. I'm not going to go to VI, but...
You're a 20-year Emacs user, Howard?
Yeah, 24 or something? 22, maybe?
More than us.
Well, I got the gray hair here.
It's about playing the harmonica, Howard.
Howard and everyone, what your comment about finger memory makes me want to ask you some of you a question. This is something I've been thinking about recently is key binding, and then like the wisdom of trying to rebind lots of different keys, especially when you're a relatively new user. There's a lot of temptation to do stuff like this, and sometimes it works out quite well. In my case, usually when I do a few and that I use frequently. But I've seen some more elaborate schemes for doing this. The Ergo Emacs package comes to mind, and that's a pretty extensive one. At any rate, I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on doing that sort of thing? Because on the one hand, sometimes I think there might be a better way to to operate my computer. On the other hand, I don't trust my ability to really know how to set that up without running into conflicts later that once I've burned into my brain with my fingers that I won't be able to undo. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, you know, this is always what people argue about, but I think we'll all admit the key bindings were meant to be easy to remember, you know, Control P for a previous line sort of thing, right? They weren't supposed to be, you know, effective finger movement. That said, I mean, I couldn't live without my customizations for anything, you know, and why would I? I mean, lately I've been doing all my editing using Tramp through 3 layers of firewall into my data center. I just don't need to try anything else. So for me, it's okay. So bind it to whatever you think is good. Is my opinion. You know, if I was starting all over, I might look at Ergo Emacs and his bindings, or or some other approaches, I think are just fine, and I probably would have done that. It's just that wasn't what was available in 1990.
I
Yeah.
try to stick to the idea of the original key bindings. So, for example, my Control XB is now some Helm buffers list, but it still feels like the original Control XB. And the reason I do this is so that if I'm ever at somebody else's Emacs, I don't feel completely lost. But I
Does
do.
that ever happen?
Surprisingly a lot, because well, I help other people with Emacs, so this my case is a bit more different. It's a bit different from the usual, and I have on occasion started up Emacs from scratch and then gone slightly crazy. But what I find works for me is I define my own key bindings of like a couple of prefixes that I know are mine, which also makes it easier to remember that this is my key binding and not something that other people are going to have right off the bat. I've been using keycord mode a lot for quick key bindings that are, like I just use HH something, and Hydra. Hydra is a lovely, lovely package that I've been using to give me additional keyboard shortcuts. So by using these, clearly personal key bindings, I can still use other people's Emacs's or a standard one if necessary, but I have the friendlier keyboard shortcuts for the things I do very frequently.
So, Sasha, is it correct that you're saying that you use Hydra or keycord to make your own prefix, and then is that how you're doing that?
Yeah, I have a bunch of Control C and then letter sort of keyboard shortcuts, like your standard Control C A, Control C L sort of thing. But most of my keyboard shortcuts now are things like if I'm doing a transcript, I'm pausing and replay and starting things again a lot. So I just type HHH quickly enough, and it does that, and that's provided by keycord for me. So yeah, it's convenient enough for me, and it doesn't involve hitting the control key too often.
Yeah, my take on keycord was I typed too fast, and I would often get screwed up.
Oh yeah, that's why you pick characters that you seldom use. I discovered the hard way that H dash is not a good one because it turns out in Emacs list we type it all the time. But the other thing you want to do is in my config you'll find a redefinition of how it defines shortcuts. By default, it defines both, for example, AB and BA. But I find HT is very uncommon, but TH is common. So I make sure that it defines only what I explicitly set it to.
Yeah, because my thing is I thought, I'll do a move to another window with XO.
Yeah.
And anytime, I had an OX, which was more common,
yeah,
but not enough. So yes, by that time I was kind of hooked to it.
So a lot of this discussion is bringing to mind a question. How much do you guys do, maybe not pair programming, but just working with colleagues, sharing screens? One of the things I'm considering is this Spacemacs thing. If it would be convenient for me to, say a colleague wants to come over and we're doing some pair programming, he wants to drive on my machine, would there be some level of convenience where I could switch it over to Spacemacs and give him his familiar Vin bindings?
Yeah, I bet you could with that evil mode. I had read this article where someone was using Tmux for that same approach, and for each person who was logged into the same Emacs session would have different modes for just that reason. And I was planning on playing around with it, but usually I just scream at somebody else and they do the typing.
There are different models of pair programming, which is a great way to kind of pass the buck along. Instead of doing the two people driving, two people swapping driving control, you could have the one person write the test, the other person make it happen, sort of thing. So that's one way to get around that. And another thing that I've done is even in my own Emacs set up the way it is, sometimes I'll have HTTPD and impatient mode. so that they could use a web browser and just look at look at the things that are happening in that particular buffer, so they can copy and
cool.
paste it or whatever. I've used this when coaching people in Emacs, because sometimes it's a hassle to send code back and forth through email, and sometimes you don't have SSH and other things already set up nicely. So it's just a very quick way for them to see what's in your buffer and copy and paste that into whatever they've got.
Okay. How does impatient mode work again exactly?
I have a blog post about it somewhere, so if you search for impatient mode and coaching in Emacs, you'll probably find it. What it does is it combines with HTTPD, which runs a web server within Emacs. Impatient mode, if you turn it on in the buffer, will then broadcast that buffer, nicely syntax highlighted and everything, as a web as accessible thing. So basically, people access your computer through a web browser, and and they can see what's in the buffer, which is kind of cool.
Do they have edit ability?
No, they don't. It's read only. If you want them to be able to edit things, some people previously mentioned, like Tmux with Screen both have multi-user modes, and I guess if you really had to, you could always run there's a multi-terminal, multi-TTY support in Emacs, so you could have the same session of Emacs, the same kind of thing of Emacs with different screens.
Oh, cool.
By the way, Sasha.
Yes?
You mentioned you use Hydra, right?
Yes.
What are your use cases for Hydra? Like, what are the examples? A few examples of things that you do there.
You know that zooming in and out that we keep doing all the time now, because of these Hangouts. So I have a key map. I have a big Hydra around HH, which is my key cord for doing various things. And if I type that, I can then press plus and minus without having to keep doing the same prefix again and again. But I can use that to adjust this size very easily. I have a bunch of other things in there too. Okay, so if I have multiple windows open, and I do a second, let me try to remember. Actually, okay. If I type no, that's JW. No, that's not it. Okay, clearly I haven't remembered that Hydra well enough yet. Hang on a second. Let me see what's in here. Okay, I have HH. Oh, okay, so it's YY. This is one of the things I have yet to burn into my muscle memory. But someday I will master a Hydra for moving windows, because it is tremendously helpful to be able to move windows using both WinMove and AceJump, depending on where your brain is.
Oh, I see.
But since I normally work with just 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the max windows, I clearly don't practice enough to memorize it. Kind of goes back to that point about deliberate practice that we had in one of the opening comments for this Hangout. How do you deliberately get better at Emacs?
I'm sorry. That was me.
Yeah?
I was just looking at something that Howard had shared for a moment. Yeah, if you're asking me to restate that question, I'm so glad that so many of you have so much experience, because I think what I was trying to get across, I don't think I did it very well, was how do you continue to incorporate new elements into Emacs while keeping it stable. Just a moment, my cat is in my room now, but did you hear what I was saying?
Yeah, I'd say little things at a time. Like for me personally, my Emacs has outgrown like over 1,000 lines, and I'm starting to have difficulties to maintain the thing. So I'm approaching what might be calling .emacs bankruptcy. So the way I started to deal with that is I put all of my new stuff into like into a certain section, and if after 1 month I still use it, I kind of put it into more permanent section. If on the other hand, after 1 month I haven't really used that new feature, I kind of get rid of it. If you're referring to more about how to learn new things in Emacs, I follow lots of blog posts. So I use PD, but I guess I should use probably some Emacs RSS reader. So I read lots of blog posts. Yeah, the planner.emacs that Sasha mentioned. Sasha's blog post is really good. I look at lots of configs from other people. Like Sasha has made her configuration public, and there's like a whole bunch of other people whose configuration is public. So I just kind of read through how they have their stuff configured, and I mimic that. A very good guide, by the way, is NoRang. So NoRang, I'll give you guys a link in the chat comments. That's a very good article. It's kind of top to bottom. He explains the entire org mode workflow, how he has everything configured, and he goes kind of step by step. Like in certain if you look at like Sasha's configuration or something like that, like they've already configured it, and you don't know how they got there to begin with. So whereas, for example, blog articles, they kind of walk you through it. This is one of the I've posted in the comments that NoRang. He step by step walks you through everything. Like, if you want to spend a week learning Emacs, then like you can go through his thing and see how he's done it. A lot of things have helped me there. And the general rule of thumb: learn one new thing every day. Like I try to spend like 1 hour every day like tweaking my Emacs.
I try to go for one new thing a week. So depending on your, I guess, your brain capacity, one thing a day versus one thing a week. But yeah, picking, kind of giving yourself time to pay attention and practice. And I find writing a cheat sheet, like maybe on an index card or a post-it note, and sticking it somewhere where I can look at it, reminds me that there are keyboard bindings that I'm trying to drill into my brain, or new techniques that I'm trying out. And sometimes, really just reading manuals for fun, if that makes sense, is a great way to discover all sorts of interesting functionality. So, blog posts, manuals, other people's source code. I find that looking at other people's questions, you don't have to give a ton of questions, of course, but the Emacs Stack Exchange, Reddit, Emacs. Often I'll come across interesting things from there that I wouldn't have thought of myself. And I'm always learning something. I mean, people are embarrassed sometimes about being a beginner, but I pick things up from beginners who are trying things out and using something I've never seen before.
Yep. I wanted to add one little thing on top of what Leo said. I follow the same basic approach of keeping sort of my stable config and then having a file full of things that I don't consider stable yet. In fact, sometimes they're just things that I wrote on the go in the middle of editing some document to make one little problem easier, right? And I know it doesn't cover all the cases, and I want to go back later and clean it up and cover the corner cases before I'd really kind of put it in my permanent configuration. So what I do is I have my config in several files, but I have one file that I call experimental.el. And if you guys can see my screen, there's not much to show, but I was just going to say I have a global key binding set up on Control-C-X. And when I press that, it opens my experimental file and inserts a comment with the timestamp and puts the cursor right here ready for me to basically write some new experimental piece of code. So,
Cameron,
yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I can't see your screen. I don't know if others can, but I'd like to.
You might have to click on it, like I clicked on this screen to see it.
I clicked it. I have the screen sharing set up. I don't know. There's not a lot to see, honestly. All it does is opens the file and puts like a row of comment characters and then the timestamp on the next line and just drops my cursor right there. And this is at the top of my experimental.el file. So there's not a lot to it, but it's actually really handy. It kind of takes some of the barrier away from experimentation, right? So I don't have to think, oh, where am I going to put this, and what file does it go in, and blah, blah, blah. I just hit a keystroke, type it in, eval it, and go on with my day. And, it's a little thing, but I would highly recommend doing it. It's really kind of changed things for how much eLisp I write and kind of how I feel about it. And then over time, after I've worked on it a little bit, then I will take it and move it into my permanent config.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of experimenting with things and trying things out, I find that writing about the things that I'm trying to figure out, or any particularly clever thing that I think I've just figured out, inevitably results in a comment pointing out a much better, much simpler way to do things. So I can strongly recommend blogging. Definitely. It's a great way to learn, and other people get to learn from it too.
By the way, how did you get into blogging? I'm just wondering. Like, did you just start writing things, or like?
Well, amazingly enough, it was because of Emacs in the first place. I started off basically capturing notes in planner mode, which was kind of like org, except not anywhere near as cool. And it turns out that you could then publish from that into a blog. And now I use org to blog to do pretty much the same thing. But and if you've used org mode for literate programming, you know how fun and easy it is, to have some commentary and then source code, and and have that all there together. Org to blog makes it super easy to then take your subtree and publish it to, say, a WordPress blog. And other people use things like Org Jekyll if you like doing the static site process with Jekyll instead. So there are a lot of options. And then in terms of like the just getting out there, you put it out there, and if you have several Emacs related blog posts, maybe you drop a note to the guy who runs planetemacsand.org, and then everyone else gets to read your blog posts too.
So that's how you advertise it? You add your blog to planet.emacs and people pick up on it?
Oh yeah, or maybe somebody links to you, or you link to somebody and they check you out, or whatever else. But even if you don't get a ton of people reading, because Emacs, right? The process of trying to explain what's going on, or writing about what you're trying to figure out, or even just picking the one thing that you're going to focus on getting better at. Maybe it's window navigation, or in my case, I was trying to figure out abbreviations some time ago. It helps you really learn a lot about it.
Nice. So how long do you, on average, how long does it take you to write one blog post? 10 minutes, half an hour, an hour?
Well, amusingly enough, I actually should have some logbook entries here. Let's go look for something where I actually have blogged it. Okay, so this one is long because I actually had to figure out org refile along the way. But so this time here is not just the writing part; it's the figuring out part, which is the long part. But as you can see, I'm writing about things in the process of trying to figure out this source code to do it, and I can use org clock to clock in and figure out exactly how long that particular thing took. This one was an hour and a half, which was very weird. Most of the time it's just half an hour, but yeah.
Nice. So by the way, a quick question about the org to WordPress thing. Suppose you published an article and then you noticed that it had a spelling error and you want to update the article. Is it very straightforward, or does you have to go to the website and edit it? Can you work inside org mode and update?
I think it will update. I usually just go into the website because at that point I'm often adding graphics. And although org to blog can upload graphics, I like a different way of doing things. But I think even if you republish a post, it will just update the one that's already there.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to speak to Will about the philosophy of Emacs, if I can, for a minute. I think one of the things that makes Emacs quite special is that you can sort of throw out the idea of best practices and go with best practices for me. think what you really want to do is you want to identify your use cases, how you want to use this thing in your everyday life, how it's going to help you get better at whatever it is that you're doing. I think you need to identify that because Emacs is Lisp underneath, and what makes Lisp special is that you can build towards your problem domain rather than having to have your problem domain rise up to your code. That's what makes Lisp special, and that's what makes Emacs special. So so really zero in on what you want to do on a day-to-day basis, and then get better at that. I think that's what I've learned as to how to get better at Emacs. Also, Cameron had the Control U, Control Meta X. That's the ebug defun. That's really fantastic. If you have a function and you just kind of want to know how it works, you can do like Control HK, get the key binding, and then go down into the code, and then do Control U, Control Meta X, and then run that particular piece of code, or just hit the keystroke again, and then you'll be in the debugger. And Emacs debugging functionality is fantastic. So so give that a shot.
Oh, cool.
Sorry, I was just going to say thanks. These are really great suggestions, and they're thought-provoking for me, so I really appreciate it.
One of the things it's nice too is like, a lot of times when you're reading people's config, it's just the configuration, but it's different when you see workflow, right? When you see someone say, oh, these are the shortcuts and this is how everything fits together, and then you can look over and say, what is that thing that you just did? Which is why I want to have these hangouts, because then you can see and you can share what you're working on and how you're doing things. So if you ever want to kind of go do a deeper dive of something that you're currently doing that you think other people might find useful, or that you hope can be improved with suggestions from other people, definitely we can spend some more time on that. And I've been noodling around this idea of an Emacs virtual conference, mainly because I hate traveling, and I guess not everyone else can travel easily. Also because I'm too lazy to go find an actual venue. But it seems like a good idea. I'm, however, not very organized enough to actually pull it off. But maybe somebody has more experience doing stuff like this and can help make it happen.
I've actually run virtual conferences before. Eric Johansson's the name here. And when I ran virtual conferences before, what I found was it really helped to let people have discrete time slots and have a moderator to interact as the switcher, as it were, for all different conversations. Because we had people in the room, and then this was well before Skype and all those other things caught on. This is like back around 2000. We had a voice over IP link that people were able to use in Europe and in California. So we had these voices coming out of the ceiling, and so this kind of sort of divine intervention type of sensation going on. But we actually had to sort of have some person act as a moderator, shut people up locally, and to let people in the field be able to speak completely in their own time.
Go ahead.
I just wondered how many people, like I think Google Hangouts is limited to 10 people. Do you have like conference, does it imply more people or?
Well, I was thinking like the way that this has, a number of people inside the video chat, but also any number of viewers. Right now there are 6, but presumably you could go to a lot more. You might have whoever is demonstrating things be the person on the screen with a moderator who can read out questions. And then if people have questions, they can submit that through the Q&A app or through the comments on the event page, or perhaps they might join and speak and then free up the space in case there's a lot of demand. So there are options for getting people involved.
One way to possibly handle that would be to treat it like them handing a microphone out at a conference, in that when someone has a question, you tell them to, that you have slots that are open, and then you tell them to get in, ask their question, do the interaction, and then sign out. That becomes the culture of how to handle a conference. So you have a couple of people presenting, and then people come check in, they ask their question, they interact, and then they check out for the next person to have their slot.
Sounds cool.
I have a feeling, I have a sensation I'm almost volunteering to run the conference.
Could be. There's also the slightly intimidating step of actually coordinating with everyone, in terms of schedule and who's talking and whatever, which is totally beyond my experience.
Right.
I think we can make it happen.
Yeah. The thing I was going to sort of throw into this is, Josh, I was the person who posted a thing about the Emacs and speech recognition. I was thinking about demonstrating it, but I looked at my CPU usage, and for some reason, Hangouts, I'm sitting around a loaded average around 2.5 to 3, just running the video, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I got to debug that problem. But I'm looking at what you guys are doing, and I'm struck by the contrast between how a speech interface works versus a hands-on interface. And like, for example, someone had Sasha, if you bring up one of the org mode things, we was showing you blog entries, I can sort of talk to that, if you don't mind.
Sure. What should I look for?
You were sort of showing how you do blogging from the org mode.
So, well,
You just showed a little while ago. You showed, it's like, yeah, I think that might be it if I had a little bigger font. Yeah, that's if you can sort of increase the size a little bit. Okay, yeah, go down to the place where you see started, with the to-do and started section. Bring that up to the middle of the screen if you could, please.
Oh, I haven't written much about this yet.
Good.
Working with Emacs.
Okay. All right. Okay, this is the thing I'm talking about. What you've got there is, if I'm doing a speech interface, if, for example, I'm dictating a whole bunch of things into the section, or say menu planning or whatever, if I want to change something about the properties or change the log time or something of that nature, I'm not going to navigate to that line and then speak a command to do it. I'm just going to say something like, end timer, or something of that nature to indicate the end of the time measurement. All right. If I'm going to change the properties, I would say change properties to something. And I'm not navigating within the frame. I'm giving commands that refer to a specific feature in the frame. Okay, does that make sense to people?
I've been interested in this because of a recent conversation in my blog comments, kind of revisiting this. How challenging is it to build a better command interface for speech recognition into Emacs? Do you need like deep C integration for this, or is it something you can do with Emacs Lisp?
Yeah. It's okay. Trying to think the politest way I can say this. It's stinking miserable. What it really is you have to be able. You can do it in Emacs Lisp, but what you need to do is you need to think about not operation. Well, you need to think about what you're operating on, because it's different to say something you're speaking about versus something to do it. For example, if you're making yourself a cup of coffee, you would grab a cup and you'd stick it under the pot and you'd pour it into the pot, and that's all physical movement. All right. Now, if you're doing something by speech, you speak the intent, which is, fill this cup with coffee. All right, and then some mechanism behind the scenes would move the coffee cup under the pot and do the pouring and all that fun stuff. Usually it's another human, but we're trying to make this thing more machine-oriented here. For example, let's see some examples of something. I'm working on programming by speech. I'm having a really nice conversation with a guy in India who's a PhD researcher for accessibility for children who are mostly hearing impaired, but there's a lot of overlap between the two worlds. And we're talking about the concept of using intent to describe what has to happen, but not describing what to do. Okay? So, for example, if I say something like, the early prototype does this, I'll say something like new class, from Python. And it'll generate for me a skeleton of the code, but then it asks me a series of questions. But it doesn't express the questions as, the sequence of things. It gives a list of them, and I can then say something like, oh, has parent, and then because the environment knows about what the context is and knows what other possible objects are in the environment, it will change the grammar so that when I say something that sounds like one of the parents, it'll give me the right answer, or frequently the right answer.
How far are we from that kind of contextual grammar and recognition, though?
Oh, it's far further. I don't think I'll live long enough to see it actually work, right? But it's heading in the right direction of what we're looking at. And I'm trying to find near-term solutions to get things done. If you look on YouTube for something called toggle name, that's a rough cut demo I did about a year and a half ago, where I could speak into Emacs mostly English. So I might say something like, my pickup truck =, transmission, leave mark, which gear, bracket that. Okay? And so we have a little bit of English, a little bit of code, and then, so for example, the little idioms I do, like leave mark and then bracket that or quote that, allows me to put symmetrical elements like quotes or brackets or parentheses around it, pretty easily. But the thing is, the toggle name thing will let me take the English names or spoken language names for names of things, and then it would translate it to code names. So it would be something a compiler would love, but then has the capability of translating it back so I can edit it. Okay? So, for example, these pretty far out still would translate some code name, but then I could say reverse that, and it would translate it back to pretty far out still because it would be a bidirectional transform, okay, or idempotent transform. Yes, sorry, I see the dead note there. Leo, your question about things. Speech about business cross-platform. Okay, that was something I was going to give a quick. I originally meant to talk to, because here's a picture of what I've implemented. And if I can do the Google, if you guys don't mind taking a look at the Google Docs thingy, here I'll put that into the chat window, and we can talk to that at some point when if people want to come back to it.
Okay. While you're sorting that out, I've always been curious about, was that Tavis wrote some demonstration of Python voice coding, but it seems like a fair bit of work to set up something like that and to get used to driving Emacs that way. So
yes, it is pretty hellish to start up. There's a simple form, which is basically macros and plus a little plus some accelerators that can work for you, but you have to, again, see if the thing differently. Okay, but then there's the longer term stuff which I'm trying to solve, which are actually friendly to the voice and more in line of how people think. Now, it's one thing. Maybe it's because I haven't been doing deep down programming for a long time, but I no longer think in code. I think in terms of intent. Okay.
Cool.
Can I pull that back to things that might be directly relevant for people? Whether or not they're interested in speech.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, I'm curious. Go ahead.
I go off on that path because it's such a passionate thing for me, and I forget that other people have it. Go like, but my hands work fine.
Yeah. One of the things I'm playing around with is trying to think of ways I can write Emacs Lisp to deal more with my intent rather than just what I'm trying to do. So building on your point, like you might be thinking, okay, I'm going to insert this line, I'm going to do this thing over here and type in this text. But now that I'm starting to create functions that say, for example, prepare a weekly review, and it does all that stuff for me. If you're new to Emacs Lisp, that might be something you can play around with too. Start thinking of the conceptual blocks of stuff that you're doing and try to write Emacs Lisp functions for those. And who knows, maybe when speech recognition finally gets to the point of like the what you see in the movie Her, we'll be able to automate that very quickly.
Well, yeah, the whole intent-based programming model is actually a very powerful one, because again, you focus on what you want to do or what you need to do, not how do you do it. And so you gave the example of doing some sort of logging type thing. That's actually a really good example. And again, if I'm going too far, just say so. I don't mind being stopped, because I know I tend to go on. But with the intent-based programming model, for example, if I was going to do this with hands or whatever else it is, the intent is to bring up Emacs in the context of my logging environment. Okay, so that way I can. I've run this problem with speech. So basically, if I said brought up Emacs and I said log task, or typing or speaking, then it should know enough about what I mean by log tasks to go bring up the log file, to put me at the right place, and to make sure that the log file gets saved automatically after I've changed something in it. Okay? And there's things like entering. Then there's sub-intent tasks, like for example, if I put in a new entry, I know it's going to have a timestamp. It's going to have a certain syntax, like you've done here, except it does it automatically. Okay, and that's an example of intent-based interface.
This sounds like it would be a really good demonstration to see, and I understand CPU usage and all of that stuff. But would it be possible for you to record a video or something that we can look at sometime?
Yes, as soon as I get the link between the virtual machine feeding back into the Linux environment is not fragile anymore, but it's not stable. That horrible space where you go when you're developing a new technique, and that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to get to the point where it's stable.
Right.
And so that's the plan is to do some demos like this to show people the difference.
All right. That should be really cool. Leo, since you have a question, do you want to give the details for that one? Not related to this, but also an Emacs question. So.
Emacs? I was just wondering whether anyone uses Emacs. Just a note about the natural speak. I think it's an interesting notion. I personally work in an office, so I wouldn't be able to use that sort of thing, but working from home, I think it'd be cool to talk to the computer. With that said, I was just wondering whether anyone uses Emacs for LaTeX and taking math notes, because I still have a year to go in the university and I do a lot of math work. And I was wondering whether I could use Emacs for taking my math notes. Because in the past I used something called math type, which with a few quick key bindings you could type math equations very quickly. But I found organizing my notes wasn't quite as nice as you could do in, for example, org mode. So just wondering, has anyone used LaTeX or has recommendations or anything?
I've certainly done it, but it's been a long, long time, so I wouldn't have much in the way of recommendations. I mean, I know that the LaTeX editing capabilities from Emacs are pretty strong as far as just understanding the formats of the files and font locking and all of that, but I certainly don't have any pro tips, so yeah, I wish I did.
I was also curious whether you could marry LaTeX and org mode together.
Yes. So I helped a friend of mine set up org with LaTeX, which actually is built in. You can take a look in the manual to see how to do it, and you can then publish blog posts using that. So using org to blog, or also exporting to HTML, or to LaTeX, so that you can publish using LaTeX itself. So there's several ways that you can take advantage of that, right? You can use it for formulas and things like that naturally. You can use org to write most of your stuff, and then export it to LaTeX for any additional formatting, or to take advantage of the PDF LaTeX or whatever production process you have. You can also export as HTML and then have your equations converted from LaTeX into images that are embedded in the HTML.
That's nice. I was also wondering, is there any notion of preview as to show you what you type as you go along?
Well, not quite. You can, if you have the LaTeX, you can have it show you the images in line, but I don't think it'll give you a WYSIWYG editor. You just basically write the equation and then you generate the image and it displays that.
Okay.
If you need something a little more interactive than that, I don't know, Lix maybe?
Well,
Okay.
Yeah,
I
like
was going to suggest,
pretty cool.
yeah, I was going to suggest something as well, which is to try looking at common things together. This comes back to the intent model. Look at what you're trying to do in LaTeX, what you're trying to express, and use some sort of snippet tool to express those elements so that you work at the level of the mathematical constructs rather than at LaTeX level.
Okay.
Someone asked about Dvorak. You mean, I personally use Comac. It's a different keyboard layout, which is a bit more efficient than QWERTY. And one of my choices for going with Emacs as opposed to Vim, for example, was that Emacs was more friendly towards different keyboard layouts. Because like Emacs is more focused on remembering like mnemonics, like Control P for previous line, Control N for next line. Whereas Vim was a bit heavily dependent on actually using QWERTY. If you're not using QWERTY, then you have to spend a lot of time remapping keys for it to make sense.
There's probably a Dvorak-friendly layout for Vim, but I haven't looked into it.
Yeah.
For Emacs, I have stuck with the standard key bindings for the most part too. I thought about switching to Comac from Dvorak, but I ended up just sticking with Dvorak. And yeah, it's not a big deal for me. Although, as I mentioned, I have some key chord combinations that mostly make sense in Dvorak instead.
Oh, I see. That's cool. So you want Dvorak, that's nice.
It was a fun mental hack because I was just like, well, what can I do to screw up my brain one summer? Yeah, I do. I can still type in QWERTY, of course, which is a useful survival skill, but I prefer Dvorak. I doubt the supposed benefits of it, but I prefer the way that it makes my hands feel more balanced.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've been using Comac for like 3 years or something like that. Because like my previous job was typing a lot of emails, and towards the end of the day, my hands would hurt a lot. And when I started to use Comac, that kind of went away. And like, I was thinking whether you could use Dvorak or Comac. I kind of went for Comac because of the Control C convenience. Like, Dvorak had the Control C, Control V buttons all over the place. Whereas Comac had them nice and close. But that was like a long time ago before Emacs.
I have a so you mentioned that your hands were getting pretty tired after typing all that email. One of the things that I've recently realized is that after measuring my words per minute for typing versus copying, it turns out I think very slowly. And so I'm less worried about RSI because now I just type slowly. And, think more, type less, and it somehow works out.
I see where you're getting with that. Yeah. It's very different. Like, now I work as a software developer and I type a lot less. Like before I was working as a manager and I just had to type tons. Not that much thinking. But a friend of mine, like one of my coworkers, uses a keyboard called the Kinesis, where he also uses Emacs, and so with the Kinesis keyboard, you have your control button on. You use it with your thumbs instead of with your pinky. For him, it works really, really well. For myself, I think as soon as I graduate from university, that's the first thing I'll be going to buy is the new. When I get a job, it's probably one of the first things I'm going to buy as well.
To Eric's point, though, I am looking forward to when speech recognition is a thing that is fairly reliable.
Yeah, you see.
Well, in its defense, it actually is reliable. It's just that you have to be it's reliable in a very narrow context. For example, you have to have enough resources on the machine. You have to have good quality microphone. You have to have an acoustically appropriate environment. For example, if I have the radio running, I have a hard time getting accurate recognition because I tend to listen to like NPR with a lot of talking. It will actually translate what the radio is saying when I'm not talking. Okay, and that's one of the downsides of speaker-independent recognition, is it picks up things from all over the world. And this is a funny story. A friend of mine used to live near an AM radio station, and she had all these mysterious words showing up on her speech rec stuff. And then she heard the station talking as she had the microphone, active, and she realized it was actually acting like a radio receiver and picking up and translating the broadcasters. So. So you get all sorts of audio interference from places. So it does work. You have to be careful.
I think one of my challenges actually, and one of the reasons why org mode works so well for me, is that I'm just not used to talking in a linear and well-organized way. Instead, I jump around, and so it really helps me to have an outline that I can use jump to bounce around in and add items to, and then gradually transform into text. So
what makes you think I speak linearly? You've heard me.
I imagine speech recognition tends to do better if you can dictate clearly and think in complete sentences.
No, it helps somewhat, but it helps somewhat to be able to speak in complete sentences. But seriously, I go through iterations, and what the thing you have to learn is it's currently easier to say it over again than it is to try and edit it. So, for example, I will dictate some thoughts about, let's say, for instance, I'm working on some stuff where I have to worry about blacklisting based on reputation and other signals that come from the environment. Okay, and I will just blurt out thoughts, just thought after thought after thought, but it'll be very blocky paragraph form because it's just a brain dump. Mm-hmm. And then I'll look at that and think, oh, I meant, and then go back to the stuff. And after my block of random text, I just say it again, more organized.
I see. So I guess it's kind of like the way that some people actually use the transpose cars command, and some people just delete the last word and retype it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
With Emacs commands, I'll frequently do something like, say, select sentence, and grab the sentence, and then I'll just redictate the sentence rather than trying to correct anything.
Okay, I will give that a try. In the meantime, we're about 3 minutes from the wrap-up of this broadcast, so I want to quickly thank everyone who's been part of this, share their thoughts, insights, ideas, questions, and so forth. The recording will be available through the event page and through YouTube and all the usual places. If I'm lucky, I might even be able to get an MP3 out of it so people can listen to it in their podcast applications and whatever. The next Emacs Hangout is on April 15, which you can find, I guess, if you search for Emacs Hangout or on the event page, there'll be a link to it as well. This Hangout, we experimented with having some kind of getting people to think about things beforehand, and also Howard was very nice to start the Hangout with a little bit of a show and tell. Leo also showed a fair bit of his workflow. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts or feedback on the format or things that we can do next time to make this even better?
I came a bit unprepared.
That's totally cool.
For the next Hangout, I think it might make sense to have prepared little presentations of what you want to cover. Yeah. I'll try to work on that next time.
Yeah, it's highly informal and experimental, so we're figuring out how to have this kind of get together with people and maybe a bit of show and tell and questions and what.
Yeah, personally I like the format. So it needs to share.
Okay. Are there other things we can improve?
I think perhaps an additional meetup, maybe a focus on org mode would be beneficial. and we can sort of do general Emacs stuff in this particular chat. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm just thinking.
What's an org mode topic you would like to learn more about?
I think I would just like to hear people talk about more.
About workflows?
Yeah, about workflows. Sort of getting to what Eric was talking about, how you intend to use the thing. And then rather than, I can sort of figure out the little details. But incorporating it into my life, that's been the challenge for me.
Sure. I wonder if we could all maybe communicate a bit more in the weeks leading up to the meetup through the event page. You know, maybe post some ideas of things we'd like to learn more about, and the others can go and pick those up and, you know, prepare some thoughts at least or something they could present when the meetup comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I like that. I was going to ask for some help with something, which is that I'd like someone who's pretty fluent in Lisp, Emacs Lisp in the environment, to help me translate what I would say is a speech environment to make it work with org mode. Because it's clearly very powerful and clearly could use that kind of a tool in my life, but it's sufficiently far removed from what I could do with speech that it's difficult to incorporate it. Okay, it's just if anyone feels like it, we're helping that out. It'd be great. And then we can sort of use that as a basis for a future meetup.
Mm-hmm.
Hangout, I should say,
It would be great
hangout.
to have some kind of like way to ask people for help. Certainly, you can use the chat and the event page and the and Reddit or Emacs is probably a good place to ask as well. And I'm finding that this introduction with people's locations might, who knows, lead to physical meetups at some point. So that's cool too. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. If you've got additional comments, you can leave them on the event page or reach out to me at sasha@sashachua.com. That's SACHA@SACHACHUA.com. All right, folks, I'm going to stop the broadcast here and then panic off screen.
Thanks.